The arrival of the Clenari brood. It started with the humming of the air vents. Not loud, subtle, rhythmic, but I knew something was coming. Something big. You don't spend 12 years in galactic child mediation services without developing a gut instinct sharper than a vibroblade. They were bringing in a Clenari brood. Now, if that phrase doesn't make you tighten your grip on the edge of your chair, it's only because you've never seen one. The Clenari aren't just another Death Worlder. No, that title is too polite. They're the reason other Death World species check their airlocks twice and teach their young to play dead. Apex predators on their own planet. Apex across 3 others they conquer for sport. And now, they wanted humans, us, to watch over their young. Why? I asked that same question the second I got the dispatch. Commander Run, Earth-certified caregiver requested by Clenari High Nest. It read. Broodage, 5. Duration, 3 lunar cycles. Location, Joint Custodial Outpost Theta-V. I reread it 5 times. There are whole quadrants where even Clenari military vessels get scanned from orbit and denied entry. Their young are barely controllable even by their own kind. The last time someone tried to educate them, 3 cycles ago, the Phyrexian archives lost 6 mentors, a security detail, and a small moon. But here I was, standing on the steel landing bay of Outpost Theta-V, heart hammering in my ribs like it was trying to warn me. This is suicide. And then I saw them. The dropship hissed as it landed, releasing a visible pressure wave as its temperature regulators kicked in. The gangplank unfolded with a mechanical shriek. From the dark, one by one, they emerged. Each Clenari pup, if you could call something 8 feet tall with armor-scale limbs and glowing ocular pits a pup, was flanked by 3 guards, biological handlers, all Clenari, all armed. The smallest of them locked eyes with me. It was like staring down a lightning storm, raw, wild, and ready to strike without warning. Then came the High Nest matron herself, towering, dignified, clad in bone metal ceremonial plating. She approached me and did something I still can't explain. She bowed. Human, she said, voice like gravel dragged across steel. We give you what we do not give our allies. Our blood, our brood, raise them as your own. My mouth opened, closed, 1,000 questions on the tip of my tongue. But the only one that made it out was, why? She turned her head slightly, nostrils flaring. Because your kind does not flinch when faced with chaos. You mold it, you survive it, and, strange as it is, you care, even when it hurts you. She stood upright, all ceremony gone. No guards, no weapons, no observers. The bond must be true. And then, like that, she left. The guards withdrew. The shuttle lifted. I was alone, with 5 Clenari apex juveniles staring at me like I was the first thing they were allowed to hunt. I swallowed. All right, I said, hands on hips. We're going to learn about sharing and breathing techniques. The biggest one growled. I pointed a finger at him. No growling in the habitat zone. That's rule 1. He blinked, and to my surprise, he sat down. And that was when I realized something that changed everything. They weren't here to hunt me. They were here to learn from me. But why, in a galaxy that feared them, would they pick us, the fragile species of soft skin and short lifespans, as caretakers? I didn't know it then. But over the next 3 lunar cycles, I would learn truths that reshaped not just our role in the galaxy, but the very definition of what it means to be trusted. Blood, sand, and story time. Let me tell you something most diplomats won't admit out loud. The more dangerous a species is, the more terrified they are of intimacy. I learned that on day 2. The Clenari juveniles, 5 of them, each with names like choke gravel, weren't just brutal. They were deliberately distant. No eye contact for more than a second. No touching. And when one of them, the smallest, accidentally brushed my arm during environmental conditioning, he hissed like he'd been burned. I could have written that off as instinct. Clenari aren't social the way humans are. Their parenting style back home is closer to controlled abandonment. Drop the young in a storm sector, and the ones who make it out are worth naming. But that wasn't what I saw in his eyes. That wasn't fear of me. That was fear of needing me. And that hit harder than I expected. Outpost Theta-V had been converted into a controlled habitat. Custom-built sections of arid desert, synthetic rock, zero-gravity pressure domes, designed to simulate Clenari growth crucibles. They'd spared no expense, but the most important thing in the entire facility wasn't architecture. It was a battered storybook, one I brought from Earth. Little Blue Star and the Terrible Volcano, a human children's book. Why did I bring it? Because every species, no matter how savage, how armored, how apex, starts off small and scared. I waited until they stopped circling me like I was meat. We were in the sand sector. Two of the juveniles were testing each other with low swipes and mock charges. Another was digging, a nesting instinct, I assumed. But the smallest, the one who'd flinched before, sat a little apart from the rest, watching me, silent. I sat cross-legged on the stone. Opened the book. This is a story about a star. I began, slow, deliberate. A tiny, trembling blue star who thought he was too weak to shine. I didn't know what reaction I was expecting. Mockery? Confusion? A plasma shard thrown at my face? But I kept reading. And slowly, the room shifted. The digging stopped. One by one, they sat. Not close. Not touching. But listening. I don't know how long I read. My voice softened. The words grew slower. These were creatures bred for dominance, for combat. But something in the story pulled at them. Not the plot. Not the pictures, the tone, the warmth. It wasn't just a tale. It was an invitation to vulnerability. And somehow they accepted. When I closed the book, silence felt like a drop curtain. Then came a voice. Guttural. Low. Why does star not destroy volcano? It was the largest juvenile. He'd said nothing until now. I think his name was Graxith, or something that sounded like a dying engine. I turned to him. Because, I said, he learns that not all power is destruction. Some power is patience and love. Graxith tilted his head. And Volcano learns? Volcano learns that being feared isn't the same as being understood. There was a long pause. Then he nodded. And then something even stranger happened. The small one, Kier, I would later learn, edged closer. Not much. A foot, maybe two. But in Clenari terms, that's practically a hug. And he asked, "Do you have more stories?" I smiled. I've got thousands. That night, I sat alone in the observation chamber, watching them sleep, curled in perimeter, spaced out, alert even in unconsciousness. They looked peaceful, almost safe. It hit me then, this wasn't about education. It wasn't even about taming instincts. It was a test. Not of them. Of us. Would we treat them like monsters? Or would we see what even their own kind refused to? The possibility of change? The next cycle would bring combat trials. Clenari tradition. Brutal, fast, raw. But tonight, I'd crack something ancient. Not their armor. Their silence. And in that silence, something fragile had started to grow. Trust. Claws in the water. By the start of week 2, I gained something more dangerous than their obedience. Curiosity. They stopped snarling when I entered a room. They asked questions, not many, and never directly, but in that sidelong, growling way apex juveniles do when they're afraid you'll call them soft. But the Clenari don't measure success in storybooks. They measure it in trials. The next trial was water. Now, here's the thing. Clenari homeworlds aren't known for their oceans. They treat water the way humans treat molten glass. Something to respect, but avoid unless you're suicidal or born to conquer it. Their young are expected to endure submersion in artificial flood zones to trigger adaptive respiration and aggressive buoyancy reflexes. Translation? They throw their kids into death tanks and see who climbs out breathing. Theta-V's aquatic sector was designed for that exact purpose. Thick black salt water pumped through an artificial trench, visibility 0. Predators programmed into the current. It was called the blood canal. I wasn't allowed to stop the test, but they never said I couldn't join it. The facility's AI tried to talk me out of it. Human respiration under Clenari flood pressure is 34% below survivable limit. Recommend observer role only. I ignored it. This behavior exceeds standard caregiver risk protocol. Override. I'm going in. I zipped the reinforced pressure suit halfway, grabbed the oxygen module, and looked out across the black mirror of the canal. The Clenari juvenile stood at the edge, toes curled into the metal platform, eyes unblinking, muscles coiled. Graxit growled. You will die. Probably, I said, but if I don't go in, you'll believe what they told you. Kier cocked his head. Told us what? That humans run from pain. I dove before they could answer. The cold hit like a hammer. Dark. Soundless. I couldn't see my own hand in front of my visor. Only the pulse readout on my suit sleeve flickered back at me, rapid and erratic. Below me, I could sense the artificial currents twisting, designed to simulate deep-sea predators, programmed to attack signs of hesitation. My lungs screamed. I waited. Seconds passed. Then I heard it. A splash, followed by another. Then 5. They were following me in. Clenari don't swim. They hunt underwater. Kier shot past me first, lean and fast, claws sweeping through the void like sonar blades. Graxith followed, using his bulk like a battering ram through the current. I watched, awed, as they activated their second-stage respiration, gill-like slits opening under their rib plating. Fluid flowed through them like liquid flame. I was sinking fast, and then I felt it. The AI wasn't lying about the current code. Something brushed my leg. Fast, purposeful, a tendril, the synthetic predator. My HUD blared red warnings. My air tank readout dropped. My grip fumbled against the trench wall, and then a roar shattered the silence. A Clenari roar. Graxith launched toward the tendril, biting down with his second jaw. Kier slashed it from the other side. The current shuddered, and in that moment, the black water glowed with emergency lighting. I saw all 5 of them, circling me, forming a protective spiral, hissing at the predator AI like it had insulted their honor. They didn't just save me, they claimed me. When we broke the surface, I was coughing, shaking, half-conscious. Graxith hauled me onto the platform like I was a hatchling. The others surrounded us. Kier knelt beside me and hissed softly, You didn't run. I smiled through chattering teeth. Neither did you. Graxith growled something low and primal. I didn't recognize the phrase, but the AI translated in my earpiece after a moment. We swim as clutch. No one sinks alone. That night, I filed to report myself. Trial completed. No injuries. Cohesion accelerating. But I didn't send it to the Clenari High Nest. I sent it to Earth Command. And I added a note. They are learning more than survival. They are learning loyalty. And loyalty in a species bred for war might be the most dangerous thing of all. I didn't know it yet, but the Clenari weren't the only ones watching. Others were coming, and they weren't bringing young. They were bringing judgment, the ones who watched. The visitors arrived on the 10th cycle. They didn't announce themselves, didn't knock, just appeared, tall, lithe, dressed in black weave armor that shimmered like folded light, eyes like liquid mercury. No mouths, no scent, no species designation in the Outpost registry. I knew them by reputation alone. The Nyari observers. They were what the galaxy used in place of judges. Not soldiers, not politicians, just witnesses. If the Nyari watched you and chose silence, it meant survival. If they spoke, it meant condemnation. I found them standing in the observation dome, watching the juvenile spar in the gravity trench. One raised a 3-fingered hand and spoke without sound, thought speech, direct and sharp in my skull. You bond with the apex brood. Not bond, I said. Guide. The Nyari tilted its head. Another wave of thought struck me. You risk your life for them. You read them stories. You bleed with them. I nodded. Yes. Why? There it was. The unspoken question every other species had been quietly avoiding for years. Why do humans, fragile, chaotic, stubborn creatures, volunteer to care for those designed to destroy them? I gave the only answer I could. Because someone has to. The Nyari were silent for a long time. Then they turned and walked away. That night, The juveniles knew something was off. Kier asked first. Those ones in the dome. They smelled of ash and stars. Why do they watch? I didn't lie. Because they're deciding if this was a mistake. Graxith growled. Mistake? Letting us try this. Trust. Compassion. The whole experiment. The 5 of them exchanged low vocal clicks. A Clenari brood signal for unease. Kier leaned closer. We passed all trials. We did not kill. That's not what they're measuring, I said quietly. They're not watching your claws. I looked at them, each one in turn. They're watching your hearts. On cycle 12, the final trial began. But this one wasn't in the official documents. It started with the Outpost alarms. Deep, gut-thrumming klaxons followed by a sharp AI broadcast. Warning, unauthorized vessel breach. Sector D, 4 compromised. Hostile presence confirmed. I froze. The juvenile stood instantly, spines bristling, hackles raised. Who? Kier asked. The display lit up. Carnex raiders. Pirates. Mercenaries. Bio-augmented exiles who made their living off kidnapping, organ harvesting, and chaos. And now they were in the habitat zone. I opened the lockdown controls. Dead. They'd already overridden the system. We have to evacuate, I said, moving for the emergency corridor. But Kier blocked my path. No. He turned to the others. This is final trial. What are you talking about? I snapped. Graxus stepped forward, his body quivering with something deeper than rage, resolve. They come to kill or steal young. That is trial. Not ours. Yours. Then Kier looked at me and said something I didn't expect. Let us protect you. I froze. I saw it then, not in their eyes, but their posture, their silence, their willingness to face what scared them most. Not pain, not loss, but attachment. They weren't afraid anymore. Not of me, not of being seen. The raid team breached the final corridor, 12 of them, covered in reactive armor, weapons primed. I stood in front of the juveniles. You don't have to do this, I whispered. Kier touched my shoulder gently, an impossible gesture from a Clenari. You read us stories. Now we write one for you. And they charged. The corridor turned into a blur of teeth, claws, light, and fire. I only remember flashes. Graxus slamming a raider through a reinforced bulkhead. Kier weaving between plasma shots like he was made of smoke, one of them shielding me when a mine detonated nearby. 6 minutes of chaos. Then silence. And when it cleared, the juvenile stood, bloody but alive. And the raiders? Unconscious. Every single one. The AI rebooted. Hostiles neutralized. No casualties recorded. I collapsed to my knees, trembling. Then the Nyari appeared again. No words, just a single motion. They pointed at the Clenari juveniles, then at me, then, in a thought louder than any scream, approved, and vanished. I didn't understand what they meant. Not fully, not until later, not until the Clenari High matron returned, and knelt before me. The matrons kneel. I never thought I'd see a Clenari kneel, let alone her. High-Nest matron Shravka stood taller than any of her young, nearly 4 meters of pure evolutionary terror, plated in ancestral armor grown over generations. Her eyes glowed like twin suns behind an ivory crest of bone. Every breath she took seemed to rattle the air with ancient thunder. And yet, before me, on the scorched landing bay of Outpost Theta-V, she bent the knee, not out of weakness, not out of protocol, out of something older, something sacred. Gratitude. You kept your word, human, she said, her voice thick with something I never imagined I'd hear in a Clenari war leader. Emotion. Behind her, Clenari warriors formed a silent circle. The juveniles, Graxith, Kier, and the others stood inside it, flanking me. They didn't look like children anymore. They looked like heirs. I didn't raise them, I said, my voice rough. They chose who they wanted to become. Shravka rose slowly, towering again, but with a new weight behind her posture. Not dominance. Not pride. Respect. The galaxy has always feared us, she said. Called us beasts, monsters, weapons. She turned, her eyes locking onto her own kin. But you saw children. That was when the ships arrived. Not Clenari, not human, galactic council vessels. Every species who once condemned this program. Every race who voted against cross-species juvenile exchange. Suddenly, they were here. Delegates, observers, holocams. They didn't come to witness a failure. They came to rewrite history. A counselor I recognized from past briefings. Ishila of the Valari Silk Thinkers. Stepped forward, robes glimmering, voice chiming through the air like musical wind. This outpost was supposed to be a containment zone, a study in futility, an experiment in arrogance. She paused. Her gaze swept the children. But it has become something else. Something terrifying. I tensed. Here it comes, I thought. Shut it down. Lock it away. Call it a breach of protocol, and bury it under red tape. But then she said, terrifying because it worked. A murmur rippled through the gathered crowd. Translations flickered on screens. Drones recorded every syllable. This human, she continued, gesturing to me, has achieved what no council initiative, no military detainment, no educational reform ever could, not by controlling the Clenari young, but by trusting them. She stepped back, silence again, until Shravka spoke. I offer a proposal, the matron declared. Let our children learn beside yours. Let yours guide ours. Let ours protect yours. Make Earth the first bonded cradle. My breath caught. A cradle. That was sacred language. A cradle wasn't just a nursery. It was a declaration of shared lineage, of future. In Clenari culture, no species had ever been allowed to co-raise their young, not even allies. I looked at Graxith, at Kier, their eyes waiting, not for my approval, but for my answer. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about them anymore. This was about us, about proving that trust didn't have to come at the end of a barrel, that even the most dangerous species in the galaxy could choose connection over conquest. I stepped forward. My proposal, I said, voice steady, is that we stop being afraid of each other, that we stop calling strength a threat, and that we start raising something bigger than soldiers. A pause. Then, let's raise peacemakers. The matron turned to the council. Well, she asked, voice sharp as bone metal. The Nyari materialized again, silent, watching. One of them raised a hand. A universal signal. Approval. One by one, other delegates followed. I watched the centuries of fear shifted, and somewhere behind me, Kier took my hand. No claws, no armor, just a child. My child, now, not by blood, but by bond. And for first time, I saw the path ahead, not filled with battles, but with beginnings, the pact of fire. I didn't sleep the night the cradle agreement passed. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't joy. It was a look in Shravka's eyes. Not pride, not relief, but regret. Like a queen signing a treaty she never wanted to write. I found her alone in the War Archive chamber at 317 local. Massive data crystals surrounded her, each encoded with centuries of battle campaigns, genetic experiments, extinction-level conflicts. She didn't look at me when I stepped inside. Your kind are so loud, she said quietly, even in silence. I didn't reply. Not yet. She turned, her armored limbs moving slower than usual. She looked tired. Do you know why we came to you, human? I thought I did, I said. Because we protect, because we care, because we survive. She gave a short, bitter laugh. Half-truths make good propaganda. And then she said the words that reshaped everything. Because we are dying. I froze. What do you mean? Our bloodlines are failing. The crucible tests weaken us. Each generation grows more volatile, more unstable. Our apex is collapsing inward. I felt my pulse spike. You bred yourselves into extinction? No, she said. We bred ourselves into monsters. And monsters don't raise children. They break them. The air in the chamber seemed heavier. She walked to one of the crystals, activated a display. It showed footage horrific, unfiltered. of Clenari young and past broods, rage, cannibalism, implosions of psyche under pressure. They weren't children. They were weapons with no safety. Our own kind cannot bond with them anymore. Their minds reject us. Their hearts are shaped by something missing. And then she looked at me. But not you. Silence stretched between us. I thought of Kier's hand in mine, of Graxith guarding me in the flood trial, of the look they gave me, not of obedience, but of hope. You didn't pick us because we're strong, I whispered. You picked us because we're still human. Shravkar nodded. You are what we forgot to be. Later that cycle, the juveniles were asleep when the outpost trembled. The warning systems didn't trigger. There were no alarms. Only a single alert, quietly blinking red on my private console. Unauthorized quantum signature detected. Perimeter breach. I tapped in. Signal match. Origin unknown. Security clearance. Earth red 5 override required. Red 5. Classified. Even I shouldn't have access. But the system unlocked for me. A video played. A human figure. Military coat. Earth patch on the shoulder. Stood in an unlit chamber, speaking to someone off-screen. Voice-only transcript filled the screen beside it. We've monitored the Clenari bonding project. Phase 1 is viable. Proceed to Phase 2? Only if we confirm they imprint deeply. Once they see the human as irreplaceable, the leverage becomes permanent. My blood turned to ice. And if the humans grow too close, then we remind them they're caretakers, not equals. I slammed the console shut. My heart felt like it was tearing itself in two. Was this the real reason we were allowed to bond? Were we not saviors, but soft weapons? I found Kier standing in the corridor outside the dorms. He blinked at me. Why are you afraid? He asked. I wanted to lie, but I couldn't. I think someone used us. He tilted his head. Used me to get to you. He looked down at his claws. Then, slowly, gently, he placed one on my chest. No one uses this, he said. Then he stepped forward. And no one uses you. It hit me like a wave, and what we built wasn't part of some program. It wasn't control. It wasn't leverage. It was real, and now it was in danger, because someone, some faction, saw our bond as a weapon. And if we didn't act, they'd use it to start a war. What we choose to raise. I didn't sleep that night. Not with the Earth intelligence recording burned into my skull. Not with the knowledge that the bond we fought to build had a knife pressed to its spine from the beginning. Phase 1, bond. Phase 2, leverage. They weren't training us to protect the Clenari. They were training us to control them. And I was the proof of concept. The human who made monsters manageable. I stood in the observation deck, watching Kier and the others sleep, unaware, peaceful, vulnerable, not because they were weak, but because they finally felt safe. And that's when the message came. Secure package arrived. Proceed to extraction protocol alpha. It wasn't coded. It wasn't encrypted. It was a command. From Earth Command Red 5. I followed it to the armory chamber. The door opened for me. Inside, a small case. DNA locked. Labeled only with 3 words. Contingency behavioral override. I opened it. Inside, nestled in soft foam, was a tiny vial of something blue. Cold. Viscous. Alive. Nanodrives. Tailored for Clenari physiology. Designed to bypass cortical rage inhibitors. If released, they'd strip the juveniles of self-control in seconds. An off switch for trust. A weapon disguised as protection. That was the plan all along. Get close, make them imprint, then have a fail-safe in case they turned. Except they hadn't turned. They'd chosen us. I took the case and walked straight into the war chamber, where Shravkar waited. She was alone. She already knew. Earth sent you a leash, she said quietly. Yes. And I'm not using it. She studied me. Her eyes didn't glow. They flickered. Like a dying forge rethinking the fire. If you don't, she said, they may come themselves. I stepped forward, placed the case in front of her, and opened it. Then let them. Shravkar stared at it for a long moment. Then, Without hesitation, she crushed the vial with her bare hand. The nanodrives died instantly. Useless. No more leashes, she said. A sharp chime echoed through the outpost. The humans had arrived. 3 black transports. No flags. No IDs. But I recognized the one who stepped out. Commander Shaw. Intelligence. The one who approved the experiment in the first place. He walked right up to me, flanked by 2 enforcers, and didn't even bother hiding contempt. You've gone native. I didn't blink. I went human. You should try it sometime. He smirked. You were never meant to be permanent. The Clenari trust you. That's leverage. You break that trust, and they'll fold. We have projections. You have fantasies. He stepped past me, toward the children, toward Kier, and in that moment, Graxa growled, deep, unfiltered, primal. Stay away, he said. Shaw turned mildly amused. They speak now? Cute. But Kier stepped in front of him. No hurt human, he hissed. We protect him. Shaw raised his weapon. That was his mistake. Before the trigger moved, Shravka struck. In a single motion, she shattered the weapon, lifted Shaw off the ground, and held him inches from death. We gave you our young, she whispered, and they gave us something greater. He struggled. And what's that? Mercy. She dropped him. Hard. Shaw didn't move again. The message was sent, and it spread across the networks, across the stars, across every species that had ever feared the Clenari. Footage of the raid, of Kier protecting me, of Graxa speaking, of me standing beside them, not above them, not commanding, just belonging. The Galactic Council convened emergency session. The Cradle Accord was amended, not as an experiment, as law. From that day forward, Earth became a recognized cross-species sanctuary. Not because we were the strongest, because we were the only ones trusted enough to raise the galaxy's most dangerous children and teach them something no weapon could ever understand. Choice. Kier sits beside me now, grown, tall, scarred, still fierce, but smiling. He teaches now, tells stories, reads Little Blue Star and The Terrible Volcano to broods of species I never imagined sharing space, much less childhood. And every time he reaches the last page, he adds a line that wasn't in the book. The volcano stopped erupting because someone finally sat beside it. We didn't tame monsters. We raised people. And somewhere in that impossible transformation, the galaxy changed.